Permanent Ink by Maxine on AO3. Chapter 4. The next couple of weeks were weird. Deku was suddenly everywhere with Roundface. Although if Katsuki really thought about it, he'd probably have to admit that they've been all over the place together like this for a while now, and he just hadn't cared before. He couldn't seem to stop noticing them now, though, and it was really getting on his nerves. If he went down to watch TV with the others, they were usually there, curled up in the couch together. They hung out with each other after class all the time, and they were always doing homework at the dining room table. They sat next to each other during lunch in the cafeteria, which wasn't anything new, except that now sometimes their hands were clasped together beneath the table. Katsuki could see it from where he was sat at with his own group, and if Kirishima had to nudge him out of a glare a few times, well, it's not like he was hurting anybody. Besides, he was just glaring. He was just looking intensely. "What's wrong with you?" Kaminari asked on such a day. Kirishima had just jabbed an elbow into his side, so Katsuki wasn't currently scowling at anything and everything as he rubbed the tender spot. He was just staring at Midoriya and Uraraka again, Zero said, all too biased if he shoved some rice in his mouth. Glaring, Kirishima corrected. Kaminari twisted around to glance at the table in question over his shoulders. "I was not," Katsuki said quickly. He kicked Kaminari's shin underneath the table. "That's just how my face looks. Stop looking at them." "Your face permanently looks like it's glaring then?" Kirishima added, and then paused. "Wait, that's actually true." Kaminari burst out into snickers and winced when Katsuki kicked him again. "What'd they even do to you? I thought you and Midoriya were cool now." "Nothing," Katsuki grumbled. "We're fine." Zero, sitting next to Kaminari on the opposite side of the table, just raised his eyebrow. Katsuki felt his face grow warm and cursed under his breath. He didn't even know why he was so irritated, but it was almost a constant thing these days. Sure, Deku was capable of annoying him if he so much as breathed incorrectly in Katsuki's direction, but this was different. Something about Deku's hand intertwined with Uraraka made his blood absolutely boil, had him clenching his teeth and wanting to punch the first available non-breathing surface. And Katsuki was an idiot. He knew he hadn't given two shits what Deku was doing in his spare time until those damn words had shown up on his arm. But that's what made all of this so much more aggravating, because he didn't care. He really didn't. He didn't even dislike Roundface. If he was being super honest with himself, besides anyone with eyes and half a functioning brain cell could tell that this had been coming. Even when Katsuki had been in the middle of his wanting Deku to fuck off and die phase, he could still see the flustered way those two idiots had interacted from damn near day one. Honestly, it was about time one of them had manned up and asked the other out. He was assuming it had been Uraraka because there's no way Deku had actually grown a pair. It was just a lot to get used to, and he was having a hard time wrapping his brain around Deku being, like, involved. Romantic and shit. Involved like an adult way involved, and he knew they were because he'd accidentally walked in on them being gross on the couch a few days back, and he'd nearly exploded the entire room in shock. Deku was just so tied to the image of the whole wide-eyed brat he had in his mind, or the cowering junior high kid who couldn't even talk to a girl, much less kiss one. This is very difficult image, him actually doing teenager things. Things Katsuki definitely was not doing, and maybe that was part of it, like here Katsuki was bound and determined to be the number one, and therefore making sure he dedicated all his time to it, and Deku claimed he was aiming for that too, but he was actually busy sucking faces with someone. He hadn't missed any training sesh for anything. Katsuki would have kicked his ass if that happened, but just made it worse that he was still somehow continuing to improve at a steady pace. And obviously Katsuki wasn't actually spending every second of the day trying to better himself. He was realizing now more than ever just how much he let Kirishima and the others sidetracked him, how much time they've spent hanging out in each other's room, playing video games, or doing whatever else. And if he was able to do all that, if he had already had the room in his schedule for it, then maybe dating someone wouldn't actually be that much of a distraction. Maybe you could do both. Not that he had anyone he wanted to date, but Deku did. Deku had a girlfriend, and he could kiss and do whatever the fuck else with. And not that very abruptly had Katsuki realized that he was 17 years old and hadn't done a damn thing with another person. He felt like a stupid-ass teenager for even letting the thought cross his mind, but there was no stopping it once it did. Deku had one-upped him, and he was kind of pissed about it. An idea started forming in his brain, a really terrible, stupid idea that he suddenly couldn't stop thinking about. Katsuki still got irrationally mad whenever Deku and Uraka as a pair entered in the same vicinity as him, so he stopped paying attention to them and started to actively look at his other classmates for maybe the first time ever. He was surprised that the first time he noticed Kirishima and Mina sitting more closely together than was really necessarily. They seemed kind of awkward about it, so he didn't think anything had actually happened between them, but they were both clearly interested. That kept stealing glances at each other when they thought the other wasn't looking, or Mina would lead in whenever she had something to say to Kirishima, would flush a little and laugh sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. And he thought that there might be some kind of unresolved three-way liking happening between half and half, Momo, and Yarozu. Four-way if you include Kaminari in that, though he mostly seemed to be on the outskirts, doing his usual flirting with Jiro, but seemingly not pursuing anything more than that. One night he decided to ask Oh yeah, Kaminari. Okay. Oh. One night he decided to ask Kaminari about it. He couldn't figure out how to casually lead into, particularly since he'd never bothered getting in on gossip like this before, so he ended up just kind of blurting it out when the two of them were hanging out in the common room. So what the fuck is going on with Isaka and Ponytail? Was not perhaps the smoothest thing he's ever done. Kaminari gave him a baffling look, and that had Katsuki scowling and slumping further into the couch cushion. What? They're being weird. It was true after all, they were sort of casually dancing around each other and looking awkward as fuck about it. Yairose would keep blushing for no reason at all, and Todoroki mostly seemed like he had no idea what the hell was going on. Then again, this was his default setting, like at 60% of the time. Oh my god, right? Kaminari said, bouncing back beautifully from his shock at Katsuki asking such a random question. He glanced over to the back of the couch, towards the dining area where the two were sitting at one of the tables doing their homework. Dude, you have no idea. So they went on a double date with Midoriya and Uraraka, but Todoroki didn't realize that it was that. Holy shit. Katsuki leaned forward, grinning besides him. If all gossiped revolved around half and half making an ass of himself, he might actually be able to get behind it. Kaminari nodded eagerly at him and slid down so that he was mostly obscured by the couch. He kept peering over the back of it and gestured for Katsuki to dip out of sight too. Yeah, it was bad. He thought it was just a group lunch with friends. He must be the most oblivious asshole on the planet. Kaminari snickered. Uraraka said he apologized. I guess he's trying to make up to it for her. You think he likes her? And wow, Katsuki almost couldn't believe that question had seriously just come out of his mouth. Maybe. Who could tell? He's so... Kaminari waved his hand in front of his face, his expression completely blank. Katsuki snorted. He wanted to bring up Jiro, now that they were really getting into it, but he didn't know how to do it. Plus, he wasn't sure where Kaminari stood with her, and he kind of just didn't want to accidentally upset him. Ugh, he was already regretting this decision to give a shit about any of this. He needed to know, though. This dumb idea was toying with depended on it. Luckily for him, Jiro chose that moment to round the corner from the stairwell. Katsuki watched her pause very abruptly as she noticed Yaomomo and Todoroki at the table. Then she rolled her shoulders back and marched over to them. That was the opening he needed. Okay, Thunderbolt, curveball. Kaminari blinked, wide eye at him, and Katsuki jerked his head a bit in Jiro's direction. She's definitely into Momo. Kaminari's jaw dropped. What? He whispered, yelled, head snapping around to watch the others. Jiro was currently leaning on the table in between Todoroki and Yorozu, bent forward towards Momo just slightly as she spoke to her. She was ignoring half and half entirely, and he looked a little discouraged about it. Holy fuck, you might be right, Kaminari said. When did you get so perceptive? For bullshit like this? Like 2 days ago, Katsuki admitted. He watched as Jiro twirled one of her earphone jacks around her finger. They were probably lucky as she wasn't trying to use those at the moment. Nah, Kaminari said, looking back at Katsuki. He was grinning. This started when your words came in and you found out about Midoriya, who was 2 months deep in a relationship with Uraraka. Fuck. What? No. Katsuki spurted. Fuck you, this idiot has nothing to do with it. Sure. Have you told him? There's nothing to tell. Katsuki's eyes narrowed. What about you? Are you gonna do anything about ears? Kaminari flushed slightly, but just shrugged in response. Probably not right now, like if she's caught up in all the drama. He held his palm up in the direction of the dining room, making a peculiar motion with it. Then I can wait, let her figure that out first. Besides, and he was now grinning again, looking like a shark that had smelled blood in the water. It's not like she's my soulmate. Katsuki knew for a fact that Kaminari's birthday wasn't until June, so that was definitely just a dig at him. He shot up from the couch, snarling, but since his face currently felt like it was on fire, it probably didn't have the same effect as usual. Fuck, dude, Kaminari said, hands held up in front of him in a peculiar manner. Bro, Bakugo, Kachan of the Bakugos. What? Katsuki snapped. Kaminari stood up and grabbed his arm. Come on, let's go to my room. Everyone's looking now. Shit, he hadn't realized Jiro and the others were now staring in their direction. He let Kaminari pull him out of the room and over to the elevators, since, weirdly, this was kind of what he'd been aiming for in the first place. There was a slight hiccup in his idiot friend not being an idiot about the soulmate thing, but, well, he could work around that. I think you should tell him, Kaminari said the second the bedroom door shut behind them. Katsuki scowled. Did you fucking short your brain out or something? He's not my... Okay, but listen, Kaminari interrupted. He started ticking things off when his fingers... You got a really weird when you saw your words. You were all prepared to not give two fucks about it, but then you saw what they actually were and started freaking out. So I figured that you did actually recognize them from somewhere. You kept glaring at Midoriya and Uraraka whenever you see them together. Sero said you lost your shit when you found out they were dating. I didn't. And you looked like you needed saving. Man, that is exactly the type of thing Midoriya would say to you when he's in the middle of bailing you out of a number of things. So apparently he could not, in fact, work around it. Katsuki stood there for a long moment, seething, his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides before he finally caved and huffed out an aggravated breath. It could still be anybody, he grumbled. Guessing that's something Midoriya has said to you before, though. That doesn't mean anything. It ain't like that special. Shitty Hair was right. Any hero could say it. But Deku already has. Kaminari leaned forward, trying to catch Katsuki's eyes. Just tell him, he's gonna find out in a couple months anyways. Only if he recognizes whatever the fuck is written on his skin. He folded his arms uncomfortably across his chest. And even if he does, it doesn't matter. He's dating what's-her-face. Uraraka, Kaminari said dryly, amused. Whatever, shut up. Look, I wanted to ask you something. Kaminari looked surprised by that. Oh? Yeah, except he didn't actually know what to ask, so he just stood there. A few seconds ticked by, Kaminari's eyebrows slowly crawled together in his forehead. So did you want to ask me now, or... Yes! Katsuki spat. He fidgeted in place, hating himself for doing so, and then decided just to throw it out there. You've kissed someone before, right? Whoa! Kaminari snorted out a laugh. Seriously? Just answer the damn question. I mean, yeah. Okay, damn it. What was he doing? This was so fucking stupid. Maybe he should have just gone to Kirishima after all. He considered it briefly, then the idea of actually following through made him actually want to smash his face against a pillow and either scream or possibly stop breathing forever. It was miraculously less embarrassing with Kaminari for some reason, but not by much. He didn't know why. It definitely felt like there was a certain line he was crossing, and maybe he just didn't want to risk fucking anything up with Kirishima. Plus, he had his whole tiptoeing, will they, won't they, dumbass dance going on with Pinky. Katsuki's face felt so warm. What the hell? Kaminari was still laughing a little, though, and he certainly also very confused. Dude, are you okay? You look like you're about to explode in not a cool way. I'm fine, Katsuki murmured. He waited a beat and then, I've never, kissed anyone? Ha, shit. Katsuki wanted to groan. He wanted to bury himself in his bed, under a pile of blankets, and not come out for at least 3 days. Yeah, he said. Instead, that. Kaminari grinned. Bakugo, are you trying to ask me to make out with you? Motherfucker, shit! This was officially the worst idea he ever had! So this was just basically Bakugo being jealous the whole time. And then gossiping with Kaminari. And then trying to ask Kaminari to kiss him? Funniest shit ever. I love this chapter. Alright, I will be publishing the next chapter tomorrow. Make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night, and thank you so much for watching.